Wouldn't it be nice to take a simple blood test and know exactly what you should and shouldn't be eating, removing all the guesswork that goes along with some of our food reactions? Yeah, absolutely. However, some of the science behind these food sensitivity tests isn't as complete as we've been led to believe, and that can lead to people having more questions than answers when they get this testing done. So in today's video, we are going to talk about food allergies and food sensitivities, the normal response that our body and immune system has to the ingestion of food, and also the best way to approach complex problems like food sensitivities. And if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. That way you're notified whenever I post new content every single Thursday morning. My name is Dr. Bodle, and I specialize in helping women with Hashimoto's and low thyroid to lose weight and improve their energy naturally. And a big piece of supporting our thyroid pathways often comes down to managing environmental irritants and environmental triggers. And a big piece of that is making sure that our food is correct for what we need. Now, there's no good or bad food, although some foods may be better than others. Really, it comes down to our individual variability in the way that we respond to these foods. So let's start off by talking about food sensitivities and food allergies and what the differences are between the two categories. So what is a food allergy? A food allergy is when our immune system sees a food and it responds in a hypersensitive manner. It mediates this process through an immunoglobulin called IgE. And you can think of IgE responses in the same way as you would think of someone who has a bad reaction to bee stings or a peanut allergy. Because the body can be so hyperreactive in these situations, it can be dangerous to the person who is experiencing it due to complications with their breathing or potentially their cardiovascular system. It's because of these severe reactions and the fact that they can be confirmed by positive IgE testing that most doctors in the medical world consider these to be the only valid form of any kind of food reaction. However, this black and white approach doesn't always match with what people are experiencing in their own lives. Sometimes when people would eat a certain food, sure, they might not have a reaction that would put their life at risk in that particular moment, but the symptoms could still be severe in other ways. But even though an individual was noticing symptoms, when they were then tested by their doctor, these issues often did not elicit a positive response on those IgE tests. So what gives? In an effort to describe the situation where someone was having a noticeable reaction to food, but their IgE testing was negative, patients and practitioners started to dub this as a food sensitivity rather than a food allergy to differentiate the two situations. To further bolster this idea, although these people weren't having IgE responses, there are other types of immunoglobulins that can react to environmental triggers. When it was found out that IgG is involved in our food ingestion, people thought they had found the answer, and this led to testing that was associated with different types of food intake. And although this idea of a different immunoglobulin leading to different immune responses, explaining the difference between a food sensitivity and a food allergy makes a lot of sense, we have to make sure that we understand what a normal response to food actually looks like. Now let's shift gears and talk about how our body and immune system normally responds to the ingestion of different kinds of food proteins. But before we get too in depth, I wanted to be ultra clear about the fact that in this section when I'm referring to protein, I'm not referring to the macronutrient and foods like steak and chicken. Instead, we need to be aware that all foods, no matter the primary macronutrient content, have protein signatures to them. Proteins have complexity, they have shape. And what this allows us to do is whenever it enters into our body, our immune system can then see those shapes and determine what it's looking at. If these proteins are ultra complex or if they've resisted digestion, which happens in normal situations, these proteins are then surrounded by IgG and presented to immune regulatory cells. From there, these immune regulatory cells can do one of two things. Either they'll determine that this protein is a threat and they need to mount a defense response, or that it is something innocuous and they will use it to do something we call build tolerance. A defense response is important in case that protein belongs to a virus or bacteria, and this can protect us from any sort of infection. Building tolerance is just as important. Our body should normally come in contact with things from our environment, like food, and this shouldn't always cause us to have some sort of immune crisis which increases inflammation in our system. However, the important take-home point is this: whether our immune system is responding with defense or tolerance, IgG is involved in both of those processes. That means that in both normal and reactive situations, that IgG food complex is present. And we actually see that in research with healthy individuals where they are tested for IgG response to foods that they commonly ingest, and we see that those levels are elevated. This is why some people can get food sensitivity testing done and they'll see something like blueberries come back as positive. And they'll say something to the effect of, "How can I react to blueberries? I eat them all the time and I feel fine." Well, the reason why blueberries are showing up on this test is because it is a food protein that you are consistently being exposed to. In fact, if you look at the details of many of the popular tests that people are using today, these large companies admit that there are limitations to IgG testing and that it can be associated with a normal response to food. Does this mean that I think people don't have food sensitivities or non-IgE reactions to food? No, it doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that I think it's an oversimplification of our immune system to use IgG as the sole indicator of whether or not you're reacting to these foods. So now that we've covered the difference between food allergies and food sensitivities, and we also discussed the normal immune response to food digestion, let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. And also, I know that there are some people out there who really like food sensitivity testing and they found that it's been super helpful to them. If you are one of those people, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and maybe we can discuss some of the nuances here that have been most beneficial to you. So as we jump into our last section, which is the best way to approach food sensitivities, I wanted to be upfront with you guys. In my practice, I never do food sensitivity testing. As I said in the beginning of the video, I think it creates more confusion than provides answers, and it doesn't give us a lot of tangible things to go off that we can actually use for someone's care. On top of that, some of these tests can be pretty expensive, and while I'm definitely not against investing in maybe a pricier test that gives us some really good information, I don't think that these are necessarily the ones that we want to start with. Instead, I find that the gold standard for these types of situations that gives us the most best information and also does it in an economical way is doing an elimination diet. You can check out some of my other videos that I'll link below that really take a deep dive into elimination diets and how we can use it to support our thyroid and Hashimoto's. But in general, an elimination diet is one that removes our more common food allergens and allows us to then reintroduce things on the back end once we're feeling better. As we are feeling better, that gives us a better backdrop to judge against to really be able to determine which foods work for us and which foods don't. If you're still intent on getting some food sensitivity testing done, here's how I would approach it. Remember that, in general, it's the ultra-complex or undigested proteins that seem to cause more of that IgG response. Therefore, if we have chronic gut inflammation, it makes it less likely or it makes it more difficult for us to digest proteins in general. Therefore, if you get some food sensitivity testing done and it shows a large variety of foods that you're reacting to, if you then try to make some changes, improve your health, and on follow-up testing you see a reduction in the number of foods, then that could indicate some amount of progress. However, you'll want to use caution or at least take your results with a grain of salt if you're doing an elimination diet and then trying to do follow-up testing with a food sensitivity panel. Just due to the fact that you are restricting the amounts of foods that you're eating could lead to a difference in the final testing. It may not have anything to do with your progress or your health overall. So to quickly recap, food reactions outside of an IgE response are real. But I don't think that IgG testing is the answer for us at this time. If you've done food sensitivity testing in the past and it's been helpful to you, great. but I don't think that this is where people should start, as it often leads to more confusion rather than answers. If you'd like to take the next step in terms of understanding your food reactions and also supporting and improving your thyroid symptoms, send me an email at contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com and I'll get you all the information you need to be able to set up a free one-on-one consultation with me to determine if we would be a good fit to work together. If you want to start making some changes right now, download my free guide from the link in the description box below, which is 109 foods to boost your thyroid and improve your energy. But that's all for today's info. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments box below. I'll make sure to get back to them. Check out some of my other videos and don't forget to like and subscribe. My name is Dr. Brad Bodle. Thanks so much for hanging out with me and I'll see you guys in the next video.